Thank you. Hello.
Hey, Bill. How are you? We finally get together, it looks like. You're sideways on my screen. Let me see what we got.
Let me see.
going
Does
on.
that
There you
help?
go.
There we go.
You're fine. Now, where are you teaching at, Bill?
I teach at Hurley High School in Southwest Virginia, and I worked at District 43 for the Grundy sub office for about 5 years down there, and at the Appalachian Detention Center for 5 years as a PO and 5 years as a counselor.
Yeah, and you're working on your PhD.
Yes, sir.
Man, I'm proud of you, buddy. I'm proud of you. So hopefully I can answer these questions you will ask.
Hey,
I don't know. I'll give you my best. That's all I can do.
Hey, I really appreciate your time, Deputy Director. This was such an honor that you'd meet with me, because I'm doing a lot of lived history in this book. It's one thing, we've got all the facts and data and the recidivism rates and all that, but we want to get the story of the people on the ground. And you've had such a long and storied career in corrections that we want to hear that story and hear that perspective from you of how all these changes and everything throughout all the years have took place. So I really, really appreciate this.
Well, I tell you what, then let's just get right on into it. Now, I know, Jody, we had a list of questions. Do you have those right there in front of you?
I've got them right here. If I can read them to you,
and that'd be fine.
And just like dialogue, very open-ended. I want you to be able to talk and tell a lot of your story, because now I've heard this, and I'm interested to be able to ask you: is your family multi-generational in corrections? I heard that maybe your dad was in corrections.
My dad started in 1952, I believe, 52 or 53.
Wow.
He worked in he started at Halifax Correctional Unit in Halifax County, and then he left there and he went down. Believe it or not, there was a stick camp somewhere down between Norton and Appalachia. I'm not sure whereabouts down there it was. And while he was at that stick camp there, he actually built Camp 18 from the ground up with inmates from that stick camp, believe it or not. And they finished it in April of 1960, and that was the same month I was born. So, yeah, been around a while. I got an uncle that used to work for us too. They're all dead now, but his last name was Hubbard. And then I had another, well, my uncle, I guess he was my cousin Hubbard was, and then there was another Robinson that worked for corrections, and he was from Elk Garden. You know where Elk Garden is?
Yeah, right near Lebanon. Yeah.
That's where all my family are from. So yeah, been a few of us around. So anyway.
Now, could you tell me where did you start at Bland? Is that correct?
No, I started at Brunswick Correctional Center in, well, let me give you a little history. So in 1982, Virginia was a very small prison system. We only had like 9,000 inmates and probably less than 25,000 people on probation, I guess at that time, probation and parole, because we had probation and parole. But anyway, about 9,000 people. And you had, as your big facilities back then, you only had Mecklenburg, you had Powhatan, you had Bland, you had, believe it or not, Waynesboro. A lot of people don't know there was a prison in Waynesboro, but there was a big prison in Waynesboro. town, and then you had Bland, Waynesboro, Powhatan, the Virginia State Penitentiary, Mecklenburg, and Southampton, and then you had St. Bride's. So you had St. Bride's, Southampton, Mecklenburg, State Penitentiary, Powhatan, Bland, and Stanton. I don't think Marion came about till later on, but anyway, those were the original big prisons. There was a lot of field units. There were field units all over the state. You had almost probably 15 or 20 field units back in the 80s.
Wow.
So they were from everywhere from Nansemond to, believe it or not, Floyd County. A lot of people don't know there was a prison in Floyd County for years, a little field unit. There was a field unit in Grundy, and I don't remember the name of that field unit. So there was a 29, that's right, 29. And then the bottom line is that those were it. So there was 88, almost 9,000 inmates statewide. They opened Brunswick as an experiment, believe it or not. It was designed more of a prison campus than a college campus and a prison. And so I started there in 82, worked there for a few years, and in 86 I left there, went to Rustburg. Well, I take that back, it was probably late 84, early 85, and went to Rustburg and worked on the field unit there at Rustburg. At that point I made to a captain, but out on the field unit back then you just had a captain and 3 sergeants. It wasn't no real leadership and a superintendent. I graduated college, worked for law enforcement for a few years prior to coming to the department. I worked for VCU Police Department.
Okay.
And then left Rustburg in late 86, early 87. I don't know the exact time frame, but I went and worked in research department in Richmond. I worked as the certification specialist, left there and went to Nottoway. I really didn't like central office, if you want to know the truth. It was pretty boring at that time. And it's still boring today, to be honest. The field's where it's at. But anyway, go down to Nottoway as the operations manager at that time. Left the operations job, worked there from about 88 to 91, and I got promoted to assistant warden in 91. And back in the 90s, we built a lot of prisons. We built Nottoway, we built Augusta, we built Buckingham, we built Greensville, and we built King Mountain. So we built a bunch of prisons in the 90s to manage the growth in population. So Nottoway then was a maximum security prison back in the 80s, along with Augusta, Buckingham, Mecklenburg. Now your supermaxes were really Mecklenburg, and then you had S building and C building of the old state penitentiary. And if you've ever worked there, I spent a little bit of time at the old penitentiary. They had one maximum security building, and then they had, or supermax building as you call it, I guess, is where they had the worst of the worst. And then the same thing at Powhatan. So I stayed at Nottoway from 88 until 1995. I got promoted to warden of Lunenburg, and I got to go down there. They promoted me in May of 95, and I went down there and I worked from May through October. And at that point, Rufus Clement, who was the warden of Nottoway, got promoted to regional director in the East. And they called me and told me, hey, look, we want you to go back to Nottoway to be warden because you've been there so long, you knew it. There's no need to put somebody December of 205.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went out to Wallens Ridge, and I stayed at Wallens Ridge from about December 205 until I believe it was August of 207. There was a few months I did both, the warden at Wallens Ridge and then the regional director in the East. I stayed there in the East from 207 through 210, and then at that point, through 211, really, August of 2011, I got promoted into the chief of corrections when Director Clark came in. And then I went from there to this job as the chief deputy when Director Dotson came in. So, been around a long time, man. Seen a lot of water go over the dam. I think the biggest thing that I've seen in my career that really, I think, is it speaks volumes. Is number one, I think the people are the backbone. Even back in the 80s until now, the staff are the backbone to everything we do. And without good staff, we wouldn't be successful. The second thing that I think is I've seen so much change in technology. Technology is, just unbelievable in regards to the future. And I'll show you this. I hope I can show it to you.
Okay.
The next technology is going to change the way we do business in the next 30 years. Here we go. I think this is it. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes, I can.
That's a robot.
That's a robot. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's making cell checks.
No way.
Goes up steps and open doors. It can do anything a person can do. It can even tell you if the inmate's alive in the cell. See the camera up there?
Oh my
So it
goodness.
goes by the door and it looks in the cell. So what I mean by that is this. You'd have told me in 1982 that I'd watch a robot go by and do a cell check. I'd have told you there's no way in the world. So I think the advent of technology and where it's going to go for the future is really going to change the face of corrections, not only in prisons, but also in community corrections. And what I mean is this, is that we just saw some technology in ACA in Colorado that we went to that was based on an AI technology that actually could sit down and do the same interview with you as a probation and parole officer or a counselor, and then actually very interactively ask the questions that a individual would ask, and then at the end of that provide a summary of everything was said, and then theoretically could do assessments on you.
Okay.
So technology, in my view, is not going to replace people. I think people is going to still be the key, but it will supplement and enhance the type of. It'll be a force multiplier. So those two things are the biggest things I've seen over my 40-some years of service, is that technology is constantly improving. And then the other thing is that the staff are the key to everything we do. So anyway, what questions you have there?
Okay, and I fully agree with that. I come in, I started working at the ADC a little right before Chorus came into the system. And before that, if you were going to communicate with an officer at Virginia Beach, and you were an officer in Buchanan County, you just had to pick up the phone and call and then ship the file and hope that it got there about the offender. Versus with course, you're reading the same notes that they're reading in Virginia Beach. You're seeing the same compass assessment. You're seeing everything. So yeah, you are right about the event of technology making the job easier and better as it goes along. Absolutely.
Well, the biggest thing in community, and I don't know if you've heard about it, but is called shadow track.
Yeah.
You've been keeping up with it. Shadow track is changing the face of community,
Well,
and that is an interactive app that you can put on a probationer's phone that the probation officer can interact with that probationer about anywhere. A matter of fact, has the ability to say, hey, look, you're in the house right now. I want to FaceTime you. Show me what's in the refrigerator.
Sure.
So
sure.
there's a lot of stuff going on. And really, it's in the last 10 years, it's just exploded.
Well, and this is what I wanted to talk to you about, because you come in at a perfect time. You come in at the 80s. You've seen the explosion of the kind of tough on crime. We're going to, crack down more, and we're not really focusing on reentry and that sort of stuff. And then you've seen it switch back to that, and that.
Well, let me tell you what I've seen from the standpoint of, I do believe in the early 80s, late 70s, I guess, more than early 80s, there was a lot of thought about, hey, how do we manage inmates? And, prior to the war on drugs, the war on drugs is what actually really drove up prison populations nationwide. So the reality, we did have an element of programmatic programs back in the early 80s, but the significance of them did not override at all security, custody, and control.
Sure.
So then later on, as the war on crime, war on drugs started, there was not, you're right, there was not as much focus on rehabilitation as it was incapacitation. Is get everybody that's involved, incapacitate them, and let's make society safer by keeping them locked up. It wasn't until probably somewhere in the mid-90s, late 90s, you started seeing more emphasis on treatment. And I think today you see a whole lot of emphasis on treatment and family reunification as it was compared to 20 years ago. So you got a good point there. You're right. The pendulum, it swings both ways now. I hate to tell you. It's eventually going to go back the other way. I think you're seeing more programs today than you did 20 years ago. But I don't believe that you've seen less focus on security, custody, control. And I'll give you a perfect example. Back in May of 1984, when we had the Mecklenburg escape, there was a very thorough review done by the state police of that escape. And there was a whole lot of enhancement of security practices that occurred after that we implemented across the state. And then when Jeffrey Ward escaped from Powhatan, there was a whole lot of emphasis on security. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a concern about making sure it was right, but after every major incident, I think, in this country, all prison systems, to include Virginia, goes back and says, let's look at what we're doing to make sure we're doing the right things. The big escape in New York where the woman assisted the two.
Yes.
Yeah. So we went back and we looked at our processes. So I don't believe there's been a reduction at all, even with programs, in regards to making sure that our public is safe. Because if that was not the case, then there would be an uproar in the communities about prisons.
Well, I tell the kids in my government class, I said, 90% of most of the people in the prison system are getting out Do we want them
Yes.
to be better when they get out, or do we want them to be worse? So by spending time and effort on these programs, we are looking out for public safety, future public safety, not just the immediate term of, like you said, control and custody and immediate safety.
Well, that's long-lasting public safety. If you can prevent them from coming back and becoming a good taxpayer, that's helping the economy and it's helping the community. And so I think what you're saying to them is exactly right, to tell you the truth. So
Now, how have you seen? Because you've managed a lot of staff in a lot of different positions. How have you seen the barriers to these changes of saying, "Hey, well, we're gonna switch and we're gonna maybe do more of this, or we're gonna go back here"? What's been some of the difficulties in implementing
well,
that?
I think let's don't talk about corrections. Let's just talk about change in general.
Okay.
You know, most people have some resistance to change, no matter who
Sure.
they are. So if you're on a football team and a new coach comes in and wants to change your strategy on how you run your offensive plays versus your defensive plays, there's some resistance. Same thing in regards to other organizations that change is hard. So there's a book written by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. I don't know if you've ever read that or not. It talks about change. And one of the things that in that book it talks about is there is always resistance to some level of change. So if you had, for example, and I don't know the name of the corn, but it talks about in this book that you want to switch out corn that's been grown for 100 years. Let's go back over in Russell County, and all them old farmers over there have been using the same type brand of corn for 100 years, and a new guy comes in and says, look, if I got a better corn for you to plant in your field, it's going to do a bigger harvest. Not everybody's going to want to jump on it because, number one, they're going to be suspicious. Number two, they're going to say, well, why change when I know that what I've been planting is getting a certain yield at a certain price? So the bottom line is if you can convince a few to make the change and then the rest see the change, then the bottom line is over time, more people would change and plant the new corn. So how I look at it in corrections and everywhere I've been is there's always change, and how we look at it and adapt to it is critical. But the issue of whether it's programs or whether it's tight security or both, it's how you go about selling the corn. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, in community, when something new came out, it's how it got sold to the staff, that how many people bought into it quicker than if it takes more time because it wasn't explained well. So in my experience, understanding the why we do what we do is extremely important, and you work with the staff that are going to be your early adapters, meaning in this book it talks about the early adapters. You'll be more aligned to do that, and then work with those staff that are not as easy to get there. And there'll be some no matter what we do. You ever read the book Our Iceberg is Melting?
Yes, I think Director Clark recommended that.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
There's a character in that book called No-No. Well, no-no's hard to change.
Yeah.
And we're always going to have no-nos. Do you give up on the no-no? No, you don't give up on them. You just keep trying to change them. So what I'd say to that question is, what have I seen? I've seen people adapt. I've seen people change. And I've seen a handful not change. And no matter how it works, from the time I started to today, that pendulum has always swung left or right, whether it's been programs or punishment. The bottom line is there's always been the in-between, and most of the time, on who the leader is, people can adapt and they begin to change. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think it's just really how you lead and how you explain, and you got to get those early adapters on and let them help you teach what you need to get change. Just like your students, if you want to get, you use other students in your classroom to help you get the word out.
Absolutely, yeah. If you get a few of them to buy in, like you said, you can get the rest of the class. How have you seen the expectations? If you were talking to somebody in the '80s who's wanting to be a correctional officer or a probation officer versus somebody now, what do you think the difference in expectations are from those two worlds? Technology.
Cell phones, technology. If I go back to the '80s when I started, we didn't have computers. We had typewriters.
Mm-hmm.
And technology drives what all these kids want today. I think they're more inclined, and you probably see this in your school, more inclined to want to know why I got to do what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Whereas when I started in 1980, or 82, if I went to my captain and said, or my lieutenant, and said, hey, why am I doing this? Their exact words to me would have been, because I told you so.
Yeah, don't question it.
Yes, because I told you to go do it.
Yeah.
So they didn't explain the why. I think today we've got to explain the why more. And I do believe that technology, everybody wants to be able to have access to their phones. And that's harder today. And we're even beginning to look at, how some prison systems are letting them bring their phones in now.
Yeah.
We have not done that, but they are.
Wow.
Because that's what the young kids want. They want access to that 24 hours, 365 days a week contact with whoever they're contacting.
Well,
so the biggest change is I don't believe, and I don't mean this negative by no means, they don't have the work ethic that we had back in the 80s. Now, that doesn't mean they don't work hard. They work hard now.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're as committed to doing something for a long time. When I started, my daddy told me, he said, son, get a good job so you have a good pension when you retire.
Yeah.
I don't think they think about that no more like we did 40 years ago. I mean, I look at that now and I look back and say, well, I'm glad I listened to my daddy.
That's true. From the area I come in, a lot of the POs from this area, Brooke Owen, she's a senior at District 43. Chris Short, your chief down here. We live in this area. We know these people. In corrections, you can make a real lasting impact, but it's demanding. It's high stress. You've lived it from both ends, but it's impactful and it's powerful.
Yeah, it is. But that's the biggest change I've seen with the folks today versus when I came up. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of the why. You did what you was told to do, but today it's a whole lot explaining. So.
Yeah, and do you feel like staff today are pretty adaptable? Like, before this was before my time in probation, they told me that you basically had a set of standards to where you visited everybody certain times, once every, say, 3 months, and did a home visit once every 3 months, and did a drug screen once every 3 months, no matter who that offender was, and you're going to go see them X amount of time. They call it kind of bean counters. But like you was talking about with shadow tracks, if I've got Granny on welfare fraud with no violent history and she's committed no other violent crimes, I can put her on the phone system versus I can go spend more time with a violent meth offender as much as I need, basically putting me where I need to be.
I follow your logic. I think that's exactly what we're doing more of today than we did 20 years ago or 10 years ago. We shouldn't be just checking a box to check a box. I think you're right. Granny's on
Yeah.
Whereas you got such violent guy or drug offender or sex offender that you need more contact with. And I think today we're doing better with that, and I think technology's because of it than we did 20 years ago.
Yeah. Having an assessment, a risk assessment, a mental health assessment, all that, to where, like you said, you're not just checking a box. And even some of the older staff that I talked to, they said, well, it's more than what we had to do in the past. We knew exactly how many times we had to see them. We had to get in X amount of stuff. But now it's you have to tailor, basically personalize the supervision to the person.
Well, I think it's geographic too. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example, and I'm from Southwest Virginia. The bottom line is, if you go to Norfolk and you go to Tidewater or you go to Chesapeake, that's got a lot younger staff that's not been around as long as some of the folks that out Southwest. They don't. They see what we're doing as that's all they know, and they think it's the greatest thing in the world. Whereas somebody's been around 15, 20 years saying, well, maybe we need to be doing more of the home checks, etc. So it's really geographic to some degree.
Okay. What do you think, big picture, like you've seen a lot of this change, what do you think the department is really getting right, and what do you think some things the department can do better and needs to focus on going forward in terms of improvement?
I think we're getting right that we're doing a better job of listening to staff.
Oh, good.
I think we're getting right of what we're doing in regards to working on recidivism, making the place safer. And that's not only in the public, but in the prisons and in the community. What I think we're doing right is that, knock on wood, we're not having a lot of big issues across the state, even though we got some tough inmates. Take care, Jody. I think that we've got more of a violent offender. Well, I don't think it, I know it. We have a more violent offender today than we did 20 years ago.
Sure.
And we're doing a good job of managing those violent inmates. So there's probably tons of more things I could add to what we're doing right. What can we do better at? I think, number one, we've got to come up with what the magic wand is to how we can get our staff levels up across the state, because we have pockets in the state that we cannot harm people, and we can't retain them. So what can we do better? We can figure out how to do a good job of recruiting, selecting, and retaining staff. What else can we do better? I think we can do better at a work-life balance. When I started 40 some years ago, expectation was you did your job, you put in a lot of time. There wasn't much concern about work-life balance as there is today. So I think we can do a better job with work-life balance. The other thing that I think that we can do a better job at in regards to our system is looking at all these avenues out there, like that robot I showed you.
Yeah.
To how we can maximize technology, not to replace staff now. I don't want that to ever be thought about, but how we can use technology to enhance staff to allow them to do their job better. So those are the three things: how we can retain, or how we can recruit, select, retain, how we can work on life balance, wellness, and then how we can leverage technology over the next 20, 25 years to really improve operations. So those are the things I think we can do better. There's always, just like a lot of good things we do, there's always little pockets. What could Tazewell do better for Tazewell? What could King Mountain do better for King Mountain? What could Wallens Ridge do better for Wallens Ridge? What could Norton do better for Norton PMP? There's always always those individual things across the state that individual units need to work on. So that's it. That's pretty much it.
Well, I've only got 2 more questions for you. And hopefully they'll be a little bit fun. And now, by the way, do you know how I start every single one of my classes out? With a check-in.
There you go.
I make everybody speak in my class, whether it's as simple as tell me your favorite food or something related to what we're talking about. So I want you to know, like dialogue practicing, it carries on, and the kids love it because it forces them.
I went through dialogue practitioner school too.
Yeah, so we started with the check-in. I always like talking with staff who work multiple positions and ask them if it wasn't for pay, if you could get paid whatever you want to get paid, what position in your career would you do that you enjoy the most?
Well, I tell you, it's not what I'm doing now. I've looked back on my career, and probably the best job, I think, well, there's 2, so let me add to it. I think when I first started, I liked working on that front line, but where I really had, I thought, the most impact was when I was a warden. I really enjoyed running those facilities, and it's really building a team. So those are the 2. Those are the 2. Don't get me wrong, I love what I'm doing now, but hey, you go back, most people that's ever been a warden and tell you warden's the best job I ever had, anyway. And I got Moose sitting right here with me, and he'll tell you the same thing. So anyway.
Yeah, and so many of the chiefs that I talk with, they'll be like, I'd like to be a PO, or I'd like to be a line officer again. If they're a warden. So I always think that's an interesting question. And I like I said, I wanted to tell you at the beginning, I know how busy your time is, and that something could come up at any minute, and I do appreciate that. Last request, would there be any way that you could forward my email to maybe former Director Clark, if you could still stay in touch with him? And I'd love to ask some of these things.
I will send your email to him, and I'll guarantee you he'll be honored to meet with you. Now, I do want to know one thing. Yes. When is this? Is this going to be published? Correct?
It is. So even
when
though
you get it published, I want to buy a book now.
Okay. Well, no, I won't let you buy one, but I will send you one. Okay. I will send you one because when it comes to the evidence-based practices that the department shift to when you and Director Clark come in, that's a key part of the later history of the Department of Corrections, and that's why you and Director Clark were the 2 key interviews that I really needed. Like I said, I can get the data and the stats and the information, but I wanted to hear the lived history as you recounted it today, and that's what I'd like to hear from Director Clark too, because that's what makes history. And if we don't take time to do these, to take these stories down and keep them, they're just lost when the staff members leave and they're gone.
Well, I promise you, Billy, after today, I will matter of fact, I've talked to him 2-3 times a week. I will matter of fact, I'm going to play golf with him this Saturday.
Okay.
So I will make sure he knows, but no later than tomorrow, and he'll be in touch, okay?
Hey, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate talking with you.
Thank you, and I appreciate you, buddy.
All right, you have a good one. Bye-bye.